Um, this is going to be a quick live because I just got done watching the highlights of Trump's response to the Supreme Court, and it has been, dear God Almighty, Lord, help us, please. Um, if you're looking for the definition of batshit crazy, we saw that today. Hell, we saw that yesterday in Rome, Georgia. But let's go and back up a few hours, okay? So today, the thing that Trump feared the most came to fruition. The tariffs were struck down. His tariffs were struck down by the Supreme Court. Now, why? Well, because there's nothing about tariffs in this emergency uh, emergency law. They took it out of 50 years ago, and then they made it because basically in response to um, uh, the boycott, the oil boycott, if you remember that, and it's and he just there's not a word of tariffs in there. Okay, the only thing in there is that you can do something in case of an emergency, like a war, or like what happened in oil embargo of '73, and that's where this came from. They wanted to give the president some way to react in extreme circumstances. Well, Trump has a lot of shady assholes around him, and they saw this law as a way to get tariffs by avoiding Congress. Because remember, tariffs are a tax. Repeat after me: tariffs are a tax. Congress, the first article of the Constitution, is the only ones that can levy taxes. They're the only ones that can levy that control the money. Okay. If you want a tariff, it has to go through Congress. You remember Herbert Hoover's tariffs went through Congress, and it was a disaster. Uh, and he got approval though, and it all fell apart in '29. Now, that was one of the reasons for one of the underlying reasons depression. It's not the only one, but instead, give me a moment. What's result? Hopefully that sounds better. I went ahead and put my headset and my microphone's on. So, where were we? So Congress set those tariffs for Hoover. Thank you. Set those tariffs for Hoover because it was two senators came up with us, and Hoover signed it into law. Now the problem, Trump does never, when you run a business, okay, you have the owner, but he's not really the owner of a public business. The business, he own it, but you have the majority shares, but you have a board. And it's a CEO, CFO, a president, a vice president, all those positions. And they all have a say in what has to be done. Now, the CEO usually has the final say, and they take the heat for everything. But you cannot willy nilly do everything. You have to go through the board. Okay, they have to prove it. If you look at the United States, kind of like that, the forefathers set up the equal branches of government because they wanted to prevent what King George had been doing to them, just taxation. Do what you want, avoiding Parliament. Okay, that's why the House, until recently, was in charge of the financial. All spending had to go through the House. Spending would then be approved by the president, and the executive branch was all the departments would dole out that money through appropriations. Correct? Trump perverted that because with Mike Johnson as Speaker of the House, he just said, "Bend me over, Daddy. Do whatever you want." And that's what Trump's been doing for the last year, taking our money, spending our money. Doge. Um, the other day he he committed $10 billion to this board of peace grift that he created. You do know that whenever you're involved with other countries, something like that, that's kind of like a treaty that has to be approved by the Congress, by the Senate. It's in the Constitution. That's a treaty, has to be approved. And he's committing, he says, I'm going to give him $10 billion of our money. He doesn't control our money. And that's the thing with Trump. He never ran his businesses like a business. He ran his business as a king. All right. Who the fuck else can bankrupt casinos? Trump can't, because he doesn't listen to people. He wants to do everything his way. He thinks he's the smartest man. He is not. He wasn't the smartest man when he had before he had dementia. Although when I'm hearing he had dementia for a long time, he just was. This is what I want to do. It doesn't make sense, but this is what I want to do, and it never worked. That's why they never let him an NFL team. He ran the New Jersey Generals into the ground. That was a perfect USL situation. FL. He was about order, and the NFL said no, would never let him touch the team. One, he never had the money to buy a football team. If you want an example of what that is, see the time you guys complain about the Dodgers and everything. The Dodgers were owned by some guy named Frank McCourt, some Boston dude that baseball sold the Dodgers to. Who really didn't have any money. He was a parking lot guy, and he ran the Dodgers into the ground for years. Ran him into the ground. All right. Then he sold it to Guggenheim, but the only reason he sold it to the Guggenheim Group is that he got into trouble by messing around on his wife, and they forced him to, on a divorce decree, they had to sell the team. Best thing that ever happened to the Dodgers. And that's what you see now. But the point is, Donald Trump is the equivalent of Frank McCourt. He doesn't have enough money to do anything. He does what he wants, and he cheats on his wife. These are facts. There's no allegedly on that, is there? Not like the Epstein. He's part of the Epstein elite, the Epstein class. I mean, and all this in view of the economy falling apart. Yeah, I mean, I know actually if they were going to say, well, they had solid job growth or solid GDP 1.4%. 1.4% from last year. The fuck are you talking about? We were pushing 5 under the Biden administration. The economy was humming. It was getting to the point that prices would have been effective. But you dumb folks bought the con. You always buy the con because he promises you to hurt somebody that you don't like. That's why we're here now. That's what we're dealing with a man who, when the Supreme Court struck down his power and said, no, you have to follow the Constitution, went batshit crazy today at a press conference. Batshit crazy. I'm not going to listen to him. I'm going to impose more tariffs. Blah, blah. Everything's fake. They're out to get me. Men want to kiss me. It was insane. It was fucking insane. He made that the thing about it, yeah, men want to kiss me and they laughed. Those reporters in the room laughed. This is what's wrong when you have a psychopath with dementia, narcissist, toddler, surrounded by people who enable him. Okay? This is Veruca Salt on acid. Simple as that. Okay? It's insane to watch it because the simplest thing would be, okay, we'll just go back to normal and see what happens. We'll come up with other ways. Because if you remove the tariffs, and this comes from Rick Wilson, and he's right. I was thinking about it. You remove the tariffs. That means, oh, everything, prices start to drop. Prices start to drop. Lynch your eye in there. Actually, Supreme Court did him a favor. Get rid of the tariffs, prices drop. And you could claim that. And the stock market would go up because then business would start going up. Now, can you fix the trade harm? I don't know, especially with the farmers. He really fucked you on those with the soybeans, huh? How's that tasting, right? And the point being is, if he just said, okay, that's fine, we'll concentrate on other things. Been a normal fucking human being, a normal politician, normal, as normal is. I mean, George Bush would have done it. I mean, add your Republican before, they would have done it because they respect the Constitution and the law. The problem with Trump, he respects no one but himself. When he became president behind that desk the first time, now in the second time, because he conned all you dumb motherfuckers to vote for him and not vote because you bought into the stupidity. He thinks that behind the rest of the desk, he's king. That's not a desk for an administrator or the executive. To him, that's a throne. And that's why when we say no kings, and then he's got enough sycophants and enough amount of this country totally devoted for him. They are so devoted for him that he is tied to the greatest child sex trafficking rings in the world. That the United Nations said that there's enough evidence to call this crime, which means some people could get dragged in front of the Hague. So bad that other countries are arresting royalty. The other countries like France are looking for people. The Italians, the Polish, they're all looking at this going, we must prosecute these people if they're on the list. People are resigning across the world except in the United States. Hi, Howard Lutkin. That's the craziness that you people are so devoted to Trump that even the worst crime done to children doesn't bother you, but it shouldn't bother you guys because you're fine with ICE arresting children and torturing them in Texas. Quick note on that. The children in Texas have been doing writing. The children in Texas have been doing writing, have been doing, I don't know what it is with the volume. Sorry about that. Could be my connection. Is that a little better? Any better? Okay. That's uh, sometimes communications. Hopefully, we get the gist of this. Um, but in Dilley, Texas, okay. In Dilley, Texas, the children have been basically with their art and their words chronicling their misery in the American version, new American version of a concentration camp. It's basically Anne Frank times 10. But ICE, who sent out a note saying that anyone who on the social media uh, critiques ICE is going to get arrested or be prosecuted by the United States government, which is a fucking lie because we have our First Amendment rights to say that, say what we want. You know it, I know it. Well, you can say without consequence. Yeah, crime be that we committed, saying that ICE is a goon squad. ICE is not following the law. ICE is violating everyone's constitutional rights. ICE is holding children in concentration camps and other detainees because they're not deporting people, they're detaining people. Why? Because a private care corporation is getting paid by the head for keeping them there. That's why they're ignoring court orders for habeas corpus. That's why they're building more warehouses so they can go after immigrants that have already been through the process, naturalized citizens, to reevaluate their status, as per Stephen Miller, because that'll be more bodies. Why else would they be buying all these fucking warehouses? So if you're a naturalized citizen, in other words, you went through the process, they're looking to pick everybody out and stick them in their detainment. This is about making money for corporation that runs these prisons. But back to the point. Um, Yeah, yeah. And Rose Crew, I want to say this: as a Dodger fan, I'm a little pissed because the Guggenheim Group in their portfolios have these companies that are doing these prisons, and they need to divest themselves. And I think it's time for us to say as a speak out because that's wrong. There is no reason for that. There's no reason for these detention centers. If you did it properly, because they always say the response to ICE's behavior from everyone is, yeah, well, Obama deported more. Yeah, but he did it right. Wasn't picking up people in the streets, wasn't stopping people, wasn't chasing someone in the streets of Savannah, running their car to a teacher's car that she died in the accident, and also because ICE kept EMTs out for 30 minutes while they arrested someone. They were covering their asses. Yeah, and he did it through the courts, and Obama answered for it and changed the stuff, but he did not terrorize people. Did it through the legal system. You're not doing it through the legal system. You are circumventing the legal system. You're creating your own, basically, fascist state. You would make those people non-people. What's the difference between them and being in Dhaka or Auschwitz? There isn't. Or Gulag in Russia. I mean, that's what it is. So right now in Delhi, these kids were chronicling their their hurt, their pain, and ICE agents went in there and took all their stuff, all their writings, took away their material because they do not want them saying anything about how they're being treated. Just took it. A lot of it's out already, and it'll go into history, but that's what we're dealing with. That's the mindset that comes from the top. Donald Trump lives in a fantasy. That batshit crazy news conference was got to be the final straw. You cannot tell the Supreme Court, fuck you. No, I'm above the Supreme Court. The system was not designed for that. You cannot do that because that's what America is. And he's going to do this 10% general tariff for everything because he said he can't. Because he said the court said he can and he can ruin countries. I mean, this is what we voted for. And everyone's going to say, well, I didn't vote for him. Yeah, neither did I, but we're stuck with this. That's a cop out. That's a fucking cop out. I hear that all the time, especially Johnny Bananas, the great creator of TikTok, social media, calls a lot of the far lefters tankies. People who take the election, don't want to vote, who come up with excuses that both sides are the same, which it isn't. Because it's not a question about politics. If you come to me and say I don't follow politics, it's ain't about fucking politics. It's about right, wrong, especially when it comes to ICE and immigration. It's about human rights. It has nothing to do with politics. It's not about, you know, owning the electorate. It's about right or wrong. And that's why the kids, large students, are out there protesting. Yeah, they're going with the crowd. That's what you did, especially in the 60s. But they also know it's wrong. And to watch adults go after the kids tells me you have a problem. You're a cult. And you don't want anyone to disagree with you. Is that sad? The basic American right is my right to disagree with your view, my right to debate you about this view, my right not to demonize, okay, unless your view deserves it, i.e., racist or harmful things. But if you have a different view of how we should do things, that's called debate. That's called America. We can criticize you. We criticize the president. We can say we don't like the way things are going. I voted. I have a right to. It's in the Constitution. As long as I'm not doing something that harms others. People walking down the streets protesting uh, peacefully is not wrong. ICE and the reaction is wrong. Trump administration, any criticism, is basically exactly like their leader. Knee-jerk, childish. It's amazing to watch these adults. Karen 11 lying. And then when you call her out, they get all pissy and say you're not patriotic. Brendan Carr, who's one of the architects of Project 2025, today, who's now head of the FCC, is asking, which is basically probably in a month or so, be demanding that TV stations come up with patriotic programming and messages heralding the president's message in so to celebrate the 250th anniversary of America coming up. Not patriotic about the history and those who came before us and built this country. Not about people who died to sacrifice the country. Not about the progress we've made in this country. No, they consider patriotism Trumpism. That's what we're dealing with. Patriotism is not Trumpism. Being an American is more than that. Being American is all of us. Okay. Deciding who's an American is wrong. Okay. Do you know why people come here? Because there's opportunity. Not saying they're going to succeed, it's opportunity. And the people that keep picking up all across the country is wrong because they're hardworking people. Majority are just trying to make a living, trying to get by. Not hurting anybody. The only people that are hurting is people who hate them. So right now, Trump is basically the good thing about all this. Trump is literally cutting his own wrist as we speak. He is literally cutting off his political. Because now Republicans will have to respond to that. Mike Johnson is going to have to respond to that. They're going to have to put terrorists up for a vote in the Congress, which might get to the House. Who the fuck ain't going to get to the Senate? May not even get to the House. Trump is going to try to impose tariffs, and they'll be blocked by lower courts. Why? Supreme Court says you can't do it, bro. Right? Trump, right now, what we saw was attack. It's just, someone who raised kids who are now all adults, remember those moments. And watch that. And the worst thing about that, the worst thing about that was the press. They don't have us in them. They have those sycophants in there. Simple as that. Sycophants who don't question about anything, don't really push. Same thing with Karen Love. She spewed a whole bunch of lies about the economy and that the reason that job loss, that job numbers are different from because they were all illegal aliens. Let that sit for a second. She said that. And not one presser, not one uh, person in that room questioned her. She said, what I'm saying is the truth because it comes from me in the White House. I mean, it's ridiculous. And the irony of all this, Trump was in Rome, Georgia, was at some venue celebrating something. Because Rouse, because the people that should do that, the Department of Justice that should be independent, hung a picture of Trump in front of their building the other day. Those people who are supposed to look out for us are now in his pocket because they're sinking fast. They are true believers. You saw Pam Bondi. She's defending the indefensible. They are defending the indefensible. I mean, I'm talking about many things. I ain't even touched on that yet. Barely. I'm just talking about economics right now. And a man who has no clue because the only thing that matters is ego. The Supreme Court slapped him in the mouth because he has no idea how the economy works. He got sold a bunch of goods by a bunch of assholes with tariffs, which really put a lot of small business out of work. And the Supreme Court actually tossed him a bone and he rejects it because they told him what to do. And the one thing wrong with Donald Trump has always been for decades, for all his life, no one told him no. And when they did tell him no, he used violence to get his way, or force to get his way, or lawsuits to get his way, or money to get his way. That is Trump. And now he conned everyone to become president. And, and now you have to look at that man from today's press conference and going, it is time that we have the safety of everybody. The sad part, they're afraid of him still. Here in Georgia, okay, my internet connection's not stable. Been having problems with my thing. So if you're seeing, if they're uh, in and outs, I'm so sorry. I've been having problems with my net for a while. Thank you. Sorry. Thank you for your patience. Hopefully this will come out. Hopefully it'll work. I apologize for that. But it's time to consider the Republicans. You have to really consider, are you going to really go down with this ship? Hmm? I mean, Georgia, here in Georgia, all the people running for statewide office are begging for him to endorse him. But it's not going to work. They keep saying that the Senate race with John Ossoff is a toss-up. John Ossoff is going to governor's race. I don't know. We'll see. Good. I think the one of the things you're going to see is in the 14th district, Marjorie Taylor Greene's own district. There will be a runoff to see how that goes, but I don't know. Is that we can't, as a country, continue as it is. Fuck the man, Trump, point people for international affairs with Iran and everything is not Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State. No, it's not ambassadors. No, it's Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff. Steve Witkoff, who's a fucking real estate guy from Florida, and Jared Kushner was just trying to line his pockets. That's his international. And right now, in the next few hours, he may just declare war on Iran just because he's pissed off the Supreme Court and he has to save his ass. So chaos reigns. Now, what does that all mean? It still means I think we're at the end. Trump is losing his mind, and I think that's a good thing for the rest of us. He doesn't know what to do. He really doesn't know what to do. Everything's falling apart. He can't grip it. It's not working the way he wants. His people around him know it's not working the way he wants. That's why they're pressing harder and harder, and it's blowing up. That's the only hope I have with that. I mean, it's frustrating to watch him and listen to him, and listen to all the sycophants, and listen to the mass media not calling out right, to talk about moderate or Republicans or independents. They aren't any. They never will be. To listen to Florida people talk about let it all burn down because they're not going to be affected by it because they're rich and they're white. And we have to sit and normalize gangs of men with masks stopping people at will, asking their questions. They refuse to answer their questions or open their cargo window and they smash and drag them out. No due process, no Fourth or Fifth Amendment, nothing. That's what we have right now. It's not normal. It's not right. And it comes from the top. And watching that man go batshit toddler crazy today is why everything's happening the way it is. And until that is moved, So that taint is removed. Because once you get him out, the rest of them are going to fight each other like rats in a maze. Because they're going to fight. No one's JD Vance is not going to pull anybody. And right now, Democrats are just saying, see, he likes terrorists. See, he doesn't care about the rule of law. All right. So now this is the next level. We're going to see what happens because the Supreme Court has told him no. They've said yes to him quite a bit, even when he was not president. I mean, they protected him from the Biden administration quite a bit. So here we go. Rubber's meeting the road. Those guys created Frankenstein, the monster. They are Victor Frankenstein. Supreme Court's Victor Frankenstein. They created Trump, the monster. Now they're realizing their monster's loose and doing damage, and they're trying to fix it, and it's not going to work because it'll work for the rest of us. That monster's turning is going to turn the Supreme Court. You watch. He's already said things, so we'll see what happens. Anyway, I just wanted to pop in real quick and give you my take on this craziness. Sorry about the volume and the connection. Hopefully, the highlights will be good. You can catch me at RJ127 on TikTok, Binder38US here in Substack, Binder38US on YouTube. Follow there. I have a paid subscription. If you want to, if you'd like to pay, subscribe, I would really appreciate it. Trust me, I have medical bills. That would be really helpful. But anyway, thank you for listening to my rant. Always remember, though, this is the end game. But when it comes to end games, it's a tough fight. But we're still going to win it because there still is more of us than there is of them. Guys, have a good night, good weekend, and we'll talk to you soon.